Now, if there's anything that really gets my nerd brain really going, it's lists and top 10s. There's something about it that just feels so right. With the 10th generation of Pokemon coming within the next couple years, I'm frothing at the mouth. Imagine all the top 10 lists I'm going to be able to make with 10 generations of Pokemon to compare. I'm talking top 10 Route 1 rodents, early birds, starters, the list goes on and on. You best believe that I'm going to go all in on that. But there's one top 10 that can only be made right now, before that 10th generation eventually arrives. That top 10 is this one right here, the top pseudo-legendary Pokemon of all time. You see, Gen 3 just had to be quirky like that and gave us 2 pseudo-legendaries. Right now we have exactly 10 of these Pokemon. Well, kind of. Hisuian, Goodra, and Archaludon are unique cases that I'm not even going to touch that in this video. I've made the case on behalf of Archaludon before, but in this video we're only going to include the more agreed upon entrants. Pseudo-legendary Pokemon are the best of the best. They often lead the teams of champion-ranked trainers. They take a lot of time investment to evolve, and almost always prove to be one of the strongest members of your team. Such a popular group of Pokemon deserve to get a ranking when we have exactly 10 to rank. So you're probably wondering, what unbiased criteria will I be using to rank these Pokemon? And the answer is none. This is a completely subjective list, fully based on my experiences using these Pokemon and my feelings towards them. Competitive utility won't really be a factor at all. I'm more of a vibes guy. With that being said, if Pokemon discussion videos like this are something that you tend to be into, feel free to leave a like on this video and subscribe. I mean, it'd be kind of cool, if you would. Number 10. I swear, I promise I'm not some edgelord that exclusively likes the badass Pokemon. I personally love the Pokemon that are meant to appear more endearing and friendly. But for me, Goodra ain't it. There are a few things in my eyes that give Goodra this place in the ranking. The first problem that I have is availability. I don't know about you, but the second that I make the conscious decision to evolve my Sliggoo into a Goodra, the rain goes away. In order to get Goodra, your Sliggoo needs to evolve while the environment is raining. In certain games this can be easy enough to accommodate, but not always. I found myself holding on to a Sliggoo for way longer than I needed to at all, just because the region decided it wanted to be in a drought. On top of that, Goodra's signature dragon typing isn't helping it in comparison with others. There are so many options that could have happened instead. Water Dragon would have been great, Poison Dragon certainly would have been cool, despite Dragalge's appearance in the same generation. I'm sorry, but especially in X and Y where Goodra debuted, why would I use it when Noivern is right there? Like, come on. Number 9. Now look, there's a fairly big gap between 10 and 9 for me. From here on out, we're talking about Pokemon that I genuinely really like. If I were going strictly off design, Kommo-o would be higher. But when it comes down to it, I've used this Pokemon on plenty of teams and I just can't help but feel like it's leaving a lot to be desired. When using this Pokemon, I've never felt untouchable like I have with other pseudos. Its more evenly distributed stats have made me feel like Kommo-o occupies a jack-of-all-trades yet master-of-none type role, and you can't be a master of none when you're taking quad-effective fairy-type moves right to the face. Fighting Dragon is cool, and I am glad that we got it in the first place. But for real, Steel Dragon would have been much better for this Pokemon in retrospect. I know there are ways to use Kommo-o that give it a niche that it can succeed in, but with the competition that it's facing on this list, you've got to fit more than a niche to qualify. Again, design-wise, Kommo-o easily takes a top spot, but when using it on a team, the other 8 have helped me have a more fun time. Number 8. Now, where Goodra occupies a place on the edgy, derpy spectrum that firmly places it at an extreme, Hydreigon holds down the opposite end. I'm all for certain Pokemon that are designed with the express intention of being cool. Ceruledge was made to be a cool edgelord Pokemon, and it really works for me, but Hydreigon doesn't as much. I said as much. I really do like this Pokemon a lot. I just think that it's trying too hard. And also, I'll never understand what's really going on with its legs, or lack thereof. And the little wings, I'm just a little confused is all. The typing is stellar though. Dark Dragon is really cool, but it does face that same problem that Kommo-o does with fairy types. But at least Hydreigon has more specialized stats that help it find a better place. Similar to Goodra, Hydreigon suffers from availability problems. Somehow in every video I find a way to complain about Gen 5 evolution levels. You're telling me that I have to train this dino up to level 50 before it's even contributing at the same level that a Gabite would? Like, I've had a Gabite since level 24. I know it's to accommodate the fact that you encounter Dino later in the game, but still 50 and then subsequently 64 are way too late to still be working on leveling up a Pokemon. All that grinding to immediately go down to a dazzling gleam? It's tragic. Number 7. Our next Pseudo-Legendary is actually the most recent that we've received as a Pokemon community. That is, unless you count Archaludon. And again, we're not having that discussion in this video. Baxcalibur is easily one of my favorite Gen 9 Pokemon. I think its design is really cool. They really did go all in on that Godzilla inspiration. But as much as I like Baxcalibur, I actually love its second stage Arctobax. This Pokemon is just a perfect blend of so many things that really make it look like a Pokemon. There's a meme going around that Arctobax is the most Pokemon-looking Pokemon that's come out in the last few generations. And seriously, slap on some 90s angry eyes on this guy, and it would look right at home in Gen 1 or 2. But back to Baxcalibur. Ice Dragon is a really awesome typing that I'm glad we got a non-legendary representative of. I wish that Baxcalibur's design was less like a Godzilla clone though, and more like Arctobax, like a Spinosaurus. As far as power is concerned, Baxcalibur hits plenty hard. 145 base attack is the highest offensive stat of any pseudo-legendary Pokemon. The only problem is that attack that high does end up detracting from its speed and defenses. All in all, I really like Baxcalibur, but I feel like it needs a little bit more time to breathe. It's still too recent for me to rank it any higher than I have on this list. Number 6. The next is most likely going to cut deep to a very niche corner of the fan base. We're at the point of this list where all of these Pokemon are essentially interchangeable. What can I say? Pseudos are some of the coolest Pokemon. But this one specifically isn't my favorite. Salamence is cool, don't get me wrong. I really like Salamence, but let's be real here. This guy is just a dragon. Like, definitely the most normal looking of all these Pokemon. Not only do I think that Salamence isn't the best pseudo-legendary, I don't even think it's the best pseudo from its gen. I mean, at least it's in the top 3 coolest dragon types from Gen 3, but it's not number 1, and it may not be even number 2. Like, let's be real. Okay, that's enough making fun of this poor dragon. I feel like I haven't been giving it the praises it deserves. Salamence is a great Pokemon to use in a playthrough of nearly every gen, except the one it came out in. There is no way to get a Bagon in Ruby or Sapphire until you've already beaten the 8th gym. You're required to have Waterfall. That lack of availability has taken a toll on Salamence for me. I don't have nearly as many memories with it as I do with, say, Flygon. But because of this exact problem, it does make the fact that Drake has one in the Elite Four that much cooler. So there's ups and downs. One thing I would recommend is using this guy in a run of Gen 7. Most folks know about the SOS encounterable Salamence that you can get in the Ultra games, but the best part of that whole thing in the first place is that you can just get a Bagon fairly easily. Now, that's enough about Salamence. Next Mon. Number 5. Gen 8 has some bangers for real as far as the Pokemon that did make it into the game are concerned. One place that it surely didn't skimp out was the Pseudo. Like, has it been long enough to consider Dragapult like an all-time great? Gonna be honest, when I first saw Dragapult, I had my doubts. The design was so radically different from those that had come before, and especially other dragons, that I was a bit turned away. Over time though, it did grow on me. I really love this Pokemon. It just does everything right for me. It's the right amount of awesome and goofy that makes it an instant add to my team. I do have to admit some hypocrisy though, because this Pokemon commits several sins that I just accused other Pokemon of doing on this same list. First off is the availability. Dreepy is insane in Gen 8. Just grabbing one as part of your playthrough can be ridiculous. And even when you do eventually find a Dreepy, evolving it is a massive pain in the ass. Just like Hydreigon, you're going to be holding on to that first stage for a while, since it doesn't evolve until level 50. And even further, you won't see a Dragapult until level 60. The other sin that Dragapult is guilty of is being so recent. Besides Baxcalibur, who I did dock points for being so recent, Dragapult is next in line. But regardless of my blatant hypocrisy, Dragapult is so cool. How could I not put it this high on this list, up there with some of the all-time greats? Ghost Dragon goes so hard as a typing, and the power that this thing can give your team is unreal. It's so fast, and because of that, it's unbelievably reliable. If you haven't gone through the effort of getting yourself a Dragapult, you gotta do it. It's totally worth it. Number 4. Now that was a whole lot of dragons all in a row, and don't get me wrong, I love the dragon types, but the pseudos that aren't dragons seem to have my heart. Now Metagross is an all-time great. Who's out here saying they don't like Metagross? Getting yourself one of these guys is a sure way to absolutely run a train through everyone you encounter. If only it wasn't so hard to get one. Unless you're given a Beldum like you are in Ruby and Sapphire, catching this thing isn't gnarly. Beldum, for whatever reason, has a catch rate similar to that of a legendary Pokemon. On top of that, it only knows one move, Takedown, and that has recoil. So it's constantly doing damage to itself while you're trying to catch it. Once you do that though, you're set. Metang becomes available to you by the time Beldum gets to level 20, and unlike some other second stage pseudos, Metang is fairly usable. The Steel Psychic type is insane as far as availability, and even after the Gen 6 nerf that made Steel types take neutral damage from Ghost and Dark type attacks, it's still good. Metagross can and will be the cornerstone of your team if you let it. I'm sure that a lot of us that played Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire on release still remember the shiny mystery gift Beldum that we received. Getting a shiny Mega Metagross in that game was among the most insane things you could do in any Pokemon game. I hope that Metagross's placement here at number 4 serves to show you just how much I love the other 3 Pokemon on this list. Number 3. Here in the top 3 we've got some of my favorite Pokemon of all time. This one in particular is special to me given that it serves as the mascot of my brother's channel. Garchomp gets a lot of hype, but can you blame it? Garchomp ends up being a perfect combination of so many incredible design elements. It's unbelievably strong, like you can solo really any game with this guy. It's got a killer design that somehow never stopped being cool since it debuted back in Gen 4. Like, Garchomp is the definition of aura farming. Also, you can't mention this dude without mentioning the trainer that comes with it. Cynthia is the best champion, and her Garchomp is a big reason for that. And a really big factor that I've been taking into account throughout this video with other Pokemon is availability. That's location as well as evolution levels. Garchomp does this better than anyone. It is possible to get a Gible after the second gym in Sinnoh, but it's not obvious. Making it accessible as a hidden path underneath the cycling road makes it so that getting a Gible isn't cheapened by its early availability. Then on top of it, you can have a fully evolved Garchomp at a fairly reasonable time during your playthrough. I think that is exactly how pseudos should be put into games. You shouldn't necessarily make them endgame mons. You should make it really tricky to get, but possible in the early game, making it so that those that are dedicated can pick up these incredible Pokemon and enjoy them throughout the rest of their playthrough. Genuinely, Garchomp may just be the perfect Pokemon, but the next 2 are here because they're just too nostalgic for me. Number 2. Okay, what's up with the Dragonite hate? So many of you Pokemon fans have decided that you can't rock with this lovable, huggable friend. So many of you need to show respect to your elders. Dragonite was the original banger. Whether you fished for a Dratini in the Safari Zone or bought one at the game corner, getting yourself this big boy was the original grind. It was so worth it too. Having a Dragonite in Gen 1 felt like you were essentially untouchable. Whether you were running a special attack set with good coverage or just spamming Earthquake on everyone, you were set for a good time. Unless you happen to run headfirst into an Ice Beam, then you're screwed. Since then, Dragonite has only gotten cooler. The Extreme Speed Dragonite you could get in Crystal, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, or the Physical Special Split giving you so much more utility, or even now with its current success with Terrestrialization. Dragonite is effectively timeless. I will always advocate for my good friend Dragonite, but unfortunately, it's not my number 1 pick. Number 1. Now, given who I am, and if you've watched a video of mine before, you knew before clicking on this video just who I would pick. There was no doubt at all that I was going to end up selecting Bruxish as my favorite Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon. This water psychic type from Gen 7 holds it down. Okay. I can't even joke about that. It's Tyranitar. It was always going to be Tyranitar, guys. I mean, he's the GOAT. The GOAT! He's my guy. There was no chance I was going to choose anything else. Luckily, it's also just straight up a good pick in general. Like, Tyranitar is one of the most dominant Pokemon you can use in any game that you can find it ever since it came out back in Gen 2. Like, I could genuinely go on and on about how much I love this green guy, but I think I'll save that for another video. If talking about Pokemon like this was something that you enjoyed, feel free to like this video and subscribe for more. And if your ranking of these Pokemon is different, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Now before I leave, I want to say a massive thank you. This channel just recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is genuinely something that I'm at a loss of words for. I'm overwhelmed, honestly. Thank you. And let's keep growing this community of Pokemon nerds. With that, peace out, Pokemon trainers.